Hey everyone, are you ready for another deep dive? We're tackling a really interesting topic today, AI and jobs. And I know a lot of you are particularly interested in how this is all going to play out in healthcare, which honestly makes sense, right? It's on all of our minds these days. We're going to try to unpack it all by digging into a really interesting article from Becker's Healthcare. It features Duran Acemoglu, an MIT professor who's known for, well, let's just say he doesn't buy into the hype so easily. Speaking of hype, it's everywhere when it comes to AI, right? Like, robots are coming to steal our jobs tomorrow. But Asa Moglu throws out this prediction that really caught my eye. He says that only 5%, there's 5% of jobs will be significantly impacted by AI in the next 10 years.
Yeah, 5% is definitely not the number you usually see in those robots are taking over headlines, is it? And that's what I find so interesting about Esamoglu's take. He's not dismissing the potential of AI, not at all, but he's really pushing us to think about what current AI is actually good at, which in his view is mostly automating tasks we already do. Like making things within existing processes more efficient, but not necessarily upending the entire process itself.
Okay, so like streamlining things, but not necessarily revolutionizing them. Got it.
Exactly. And this is where I think it gets really relevant, especially for those of you in healthcare. Because think about it, healthcare involves so many complex decisions, interactions with patients, ethical considerations. And those are all things that, well, at least right now, AI isn't so great at. Esmaglu's point is that real disruption, the kind that fundamentally reshapes entire industries, that requires more than just, automating a few tasks here and there. It requires changing how we think about work itself.
Right, like a total paradigm shift.
Yeah. Exactly. And it remains to be seen whether AI in its current form is actually capable of driving that kind of change.
That makes sense. But I have to admit, something's been bugging me about this whole slow and steady AI takeover idea. Like, we're seeing these huge valuations for AI companies, right? OpenAI comes to mind. Billions of dollars are being poured into AI startups as we speak. So how do we square that with this idea that AI's impact might be pretty limited in the near future? Because that kind of investment frenzy seems like it has to mean something, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong to wonder about that.
It's like everyone's trying to figure out if this is, the next big thing or if we're all getting a little ahead of ourselves.
It really is a bit of a head scratcher, isn't it?
Totally. And speaking of trying to separate hype from reality, this Becker's article made me think about all this from the perspective of healthcare leaders. They're the ones who would actually be, bringing these AI tools into hospitals and clinics.
Right, they're the ones who would be making those big decisions and investments.
Exactly. And the article made it seem like even they're kind of scratching their heads a bit. You know what I mean? Like they're excited about the possibilities, but also a little wary, especially when you consider how much all of this costs.
Yeah, I mean, healthcare already runs on pretty thin margins as it is, right?
Totally.
And implementing any new technology, let alone something as complex as AI, that's not cheap. The article actually talked about this healthcare conference where apparently a lot of executives were voicing similar concerns.
Interesting. So even though, in theory, they're all about innovation, they're not just blindly throwing money at AI.
Definitely not. It sounds like they're being pretty pragmatic about it. They're asking the tough questions, like, what's the actual return on investment here? Is this thing going to make a real difference for our patients and our bottom line?
Makes sense. I mean, you don't want to invest millions in some shiny new AI system only to find out that it, doesn't actually solve the problems you need it to solve.
Exactly. And that actually gets to another really interesting point the article brought up.
Oh yeah, what's that?
Well, it's this idea that in a lot of cases, the real problem isn't so much the AI itself, it's the systems that the AI is being used with, especially in healthcare.
What do you mean? Like the computers and stuff?
Kinda, but it's a bit more complicated than that. See, a lot of healthcare systems, they still struggle with really basic stuff, technologically speaking.
Really? Like what?
Well, think about all those different computer systems hospitals and clinics use. Apparently, a lot of them don't really talk to each other that well.
They don't. So what, they're like using Windows 95 over there or something?
It's not quite that bad. But the point is, there's often not this seamless flow of information between different parts of the system. And the article argued that until those really fundamental problems are addressed, AI's ability to truly transform healthcare is going to be really limited.
Oh, so it's like even if the AI is top-notch, if it's getting bad or incomplete information, it's not going to be able to work its magic.
Exactly. It's like trying to bake a cake with stale flour and expired baking powder. It doesn't matter how good of a baker you are, the cake's not going to turn out right.
So basically garbage in, garbage out.
Pretty much. And I think that's what makes Acemoglu's insights so valuable here. He's pushing us to look beyond the hype and really grapple with those foundational issues.
So we've got investors maybe getting a little carried away, healthcare leaders trying to be realistic about all of it, and these underlying technology problems that need to be addressed.
It's a lot.
It is.
Yeah.
And it makes me think about those two potential scenarios that Asimoglu talked about, the whole AI bubble bursting or companies, going all in on AI, cutting jobs, and then realizing, oops, maybe we got ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, the scenarios really highlight how important it is to be thoughtful and strategic about this stuff, to not just get swept up in the excitement.
So where do we go from here? It seems like there's this huge gap between like the super optimistic AI hype and the more cautious, let's wait and see approach.
Right, and I think that's the tension we have to learn to navigate right now.
Totally. And especially for folks in healthcare who are already dealing with, life or death situations in a constantly evolving field, how do we make sure we're making smart decisions about AI?
It's such a crucial question, and honestly, I think the Becker's article really hit the nail on the head when it talked about the importance of critical thinking. We can't just get caught up in the AI frenzy. We have to be able to step back and honestly assess, what this technology can and cannot do today, not in some hypothetical future.
Which is hard when you're being bombarded with news about like the next AI breakthrough every 5 minutes.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where I think Asimoglu's insights are so valuable. He talks about really focusing on the problem you're trying to solve. So not just jumping on the AI bandwagon because it's trendy, but really thinking, what are the specific challenges we're facing in healthcare right now? And can AI actually help us address those challenges with the technology we have today?
So it's about being strategic.
Exactly. It's about being discerning, not letting yourself be, seduced by the shiniest new AI toy, but really thinking, is this the right tool for this particular job?
And maybe, to take it a step further, instead of always framing AI as this potential threat to jobs, especially in healthcare, maybe we should be asking how AI can help healthcare professionals do their jobs even better.
Oh, I love that because there's so much potential there, right?
Totally. Like,
Yeah.
what if instead of replacing doctors and nurses, AI could take over some of those, like, administrative tasks that bog everyone down?
Exactly. Or help analyze huge amounts of data to identify trends or potential issues that humans might miss.
Or even, like, assist with diagnoses but leave the final call, the human touch, to the doctor.
Yes. I mean, those are just a few examples. But the point is, AI has the potential to free up human expertise so that healthcare professionals can focus on, what humans do best.
Which is things like empathy and, like you were saying earlier, those nuanced ethical considerations that AI still struggles with.
Precisely. And that, I think, brings us back to Asimoglu's point about the need for a fundamental shift in how we think about work itself. It's not about, humans versus robots.
Right. It's about, like, how do we use this technology to augment our capabilities?
Exactly. And create new possibilities, new ways of working, and potentially even new jobs that we can't even imagine yet.
It's kind of exciting when you think about it that way. Like, it's not all doom and gloom.
Not at all. But it requires us to be, proactive, to really engage in this conversation and not be afraid to shape how this technology is developed and used, especially when it comes to something as essential as healthcare.
I love that. A little less robot fear, a little more, let's build the future we want to see.
Yes. Let's harness the power of this technology, but let's do it thoughtfully, strategically, and ethically.
Couldn't agree more. Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. So much to think about.
It really has.
Thanks to all of you for joining us. And until next time, remember, stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions.